Hello and welcome to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. Very fun show for you today as we're in the middle of draft and free agency season. Been talking a lot about players, free agency fits with some of these teams that they signed with, but it's left us with some teams with some questions still. Could be good questions, could be questions that, what are you exactly doing here? What are you maybe for a team? So what we're going to do today is go over 9 teams that we still have a question remaining after free agency has kind of slowed down a little bit as the Eye of Sauron moves to the draft. To help me do that, to help me go over these team questions, my guy, who I feel like I haven't talked to in a couple days, at least in person. Yeah. Plenty of texts going on between us as we put together a mock draft that's now up on Yahoo. My guy, Charles McDonald, Mr. Four Verts. How you doing today, Chuck?
I'm doing good. I'm gonna try to respect the art of the podcast. Even though we have March Madness going on today, we're still going to sit here, bunker down, give you guys a good show. There's a lot to talk about, but no, that's in the back of our minds. And one of us may or may not have scheduled a podcast when their alma mater is playing in the. I went to D3 school. No. If they haven't made the D3 tournament, I would be absolutely stunned and out of my mind. But we're here for March Madness. Just know that's how brave we are, and that's how much you guys matter to us.
For some reason, I assumed Wisconsin was playing at night. I don't know why, but yeah, Wisconsin will be tipping off in about 20 minutes after we started this recording. But yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll see the second half. Kind of know what I'm getting into with the Wisconsin game, so we'll see if they can keep it together with the 3 seed. But we are in the middle of March Madness, even football-wise, because that free agency kind of greases the wheels a little bit. Not only for us right here in context and be able to talk about some of these teams, gives us some content and narratives to talk about, but also for fans going, there's a lot of fun where we signed this guy, that's awesome, but also going like, all right, who is that guy? I see a lot of Lions fans that were really excited when I tweeted about Roy Lopez. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. That's great. This guy seems okay. But it leaves us maybe some teams that we haven't talked about. And sometimes some teams that we have, but I just really think it's cool to kind of go like, okay, you shored up this area of the team. What else is remaining? What narrative? What hole on the team? What question still needs to be answered? So that's what we're going to try to do today. And really, we're going to start with a team that was active in free agency and really was just in the news because of one of the guys they lost in Sam Darnold. And that's the Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, who I actually really like their free agency moves. But if anyone's been keeping up with the news lately, they've had some interest in some other quarterbacks. First, Daniel Jones, who ended up signing with the Colts, and then now have been kind of playing footsie with Aaron Rodgers. And this has turned into a little bit of a he said, she said. I almost want to do a little Limp Bizkit there. He said, she said. But it's turned into that kind of situation right now with their quarterbacks.
Limp Bizkit, good God.
No, yeah. I'm sorry, man. We want to talk about two Americas? That's a strong one to start off with.
No. I know Limp Bizkit. It's more laugh at you dating yourself a little bit.
Oh, white guy from the Midwest. I'm 35. That's like right in my wheelhouse right there. I was smack dab in the new metal era. Like Linkin Park, I hold in high esteem. But anyways, is that with the quarterback situation with the Vikings is they drafted a guy in the first round last year named J.J. McCarthy. What's up with J.J. McCarthy? That is my question I want to ask to you, Charles. What do you think is going on in Minnesota? Are there concerns that we should be having with the kind of footsie that they're playing that might be just a narrative getting spun, but still just leaves me with some questions what's going on in Minnesota?
Just threw a hot one in my lap.
I did.
Pin pull on the grenade. Okay, because
I did not warm you up at all. We're going.
Well, look, I'm battle tested now because I did not say anything inflammatory. On Blue Sky a few days ago, I quoted a post where Diana Rossini was reporting that the Vikings were considering bringing Aaron Rodgers onto the team. And all I said was, that's kind of puts an interesting spotlight on J.J. McCarthy. I didn't offer any analysis. That's literally all I said. You would have thought I said that J.J. McCarthy was the worst quarterback that's ever played football, auto bust, with the amount of people that swarm my mention is to basically call this all fake news and say that it was much ado about nothing. But I understand if you're a fan why you would feel that way. You just had a pretty fun season. You know the infrastructure's in place for J.J. McCarthy to have a good season. You know you have the coach. You got the weapons. If the offensive line can stay healthy, you got the offensive line. And the only time we saw J.J. McCarthy play in the preseason, he looked pretty solid. So I understand why you might be a little defensive about this. But come on, man. Like we have suffered through the past 2-3 years of Aaron Rodgers making, his entrance into more media and talking more about himself and what he thinks is important for a football team and a whole lot of things, right? So that Aaron Rodgers is not coming to Minnesota to be J.J. McCarthy's backup. It's just not happening. Because that would just be too toxic of a situation. Aaron's not interested in it. I'm sure the Vikings wouldn't be interested in what that would do to the team. And the idea that Aaron Rodgers would sit there and compete with J.J. McCarthy, who didn't play last year, is coming off a meniscus injury, it's a little dubious, right? Which has to make you wonder, where are they on J.J. McCarthy? Because I had someone posting on Blue Sky and be like, "Of course they're considering this. Of course? What do you mean? Of course? I don't think this is the move you're trying to make if you're kind of looking for a starter, I would say. And I don't know where J.J. McCarthy is in his rehab. By all accounts from the team, it seems like he's okay. But I think they obviously toyed around with the idea of signing Aaron Rodgers. I think their timeline on how long it took them to say we're moving forward J.J. McCarthy speaks a little bit to how they were looking into this Aaron Rodgers thing. Ultimately, they decided not to do it. I think that's probably a smart move just for the health of everyone involved. But now I do think it puts a little bit more pressure on J.J. McCarthy because you have to have some questions on where he's at just because they were in the Aaron Rodgers game.
That's it. You're reading the context clues of it all. And usually a guy going into year two, and I mean, sitting at quarterback, I know McCarthy had the injury with the meniscus. He tore his meniscus in August and had a second surgery a few months later to clear up some swelling, which, it's not ideal. Meniscus isn't the craziest injury. It's still a knee injury. You have to say it. I've had a meniscus. It took me about a couple months to come back to. I'm not an NFL athlete as athletic as McCarthy or had the rehab of McCarthy. There's probably some concerns too about how he's coming back from that. He's a hard gainer. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He weighed fine at the combine, but he was always listed like 205 in college. So I'm sure weight it has something to do with it, and strength. It's not just him running and getting back into cardio shape. You have to rebuild strength and leg strength as well. Even quarterbacks have to do that thing as well. Worry about the strength. It's just, to me, the Rodgers thing is not like a Matt Hasselbeck for Andrew Luck. Where it was a former starter, then now is the backup that's going to help guide the guy because he has a bunch of starts on his resume, some good quality, and he was a good quality player that you can kind of pick his brain. This Rodgers, to me, is, like you said, he's signing somewhere to start. That's why he's also talking and playing footsie with the Steelers and the Giants, and we'll talk about in a second as well. But that just, to me, is just like, I felt like the Vikings could just nipped a lot in the bud and just gone like, yep, JJ's our guy. And it's just kind of, I know they're not going to always do that. And, they kind of just say, hey, they've said positive things. They said the rehab's fine and everything. But I don't know. It just felt like they could have just nipped it all in the bud and just stopped the rumor mill that was, just spinning and spinning and spinning. And that's why it's curious to me. It's just curious. I liked what McCarthy did in the preseason. I had him as a first round prospect. I thought that it made sense that he went in the top half of the first round. It's just some interesting kind of timeline things happening right now. And why were they so keen on bringing Daniel Jones back? I get it. You maybe want a high end backup or a backup that you could work with and trust. But I was just curious that they had so much interest in that, and then so much interest in Rodgers, reported interest. But again, when there's smoke, there's fire. So just kind of have to keep an eye on this. But I am optimistic about how McCarthy will look, but I just want to kind of address that there is some smoke here. But I think it's Occam's razor is that they're going to go with the guy that they drafted 10th overall as their starter for the short term and the long term. That is where my brain goes. That's the Occam's razor to all this. But I just want to address the smoke that's there because I do like we've talked about it. I do like the free agency moves that they've made. On both lines. Like it is pretty cool, a pretty nice ecosystem that they're building there. So hopefully they drop in the young quarterback and see him go. But just interesting with the Vikings. Is everything okay over there in Minnesota? I can tell you the fans are a little in their feels right
on
now.
edge.
They're a little on
Yeah.
edge right now. Yeah, it's hi guys. I know some of you guys, but you guys are a little testy right now. I had some moments on Blue Sky too
Yeah.
where I was like, "Hey, this is interesting," and everyone's like, "They're not going on McCarthy." Blah, blah, blah. It's like, "Hey, whoa, chill, just relax." It's just wanted to
Yeah.
address what's going on here.
Right. And the whole time, like I never really thought they were going to sign Aaron Rodgers.
Me either.
But, you know, they're poking around with it. And the fact that poking around is interesting. Racine wasn't the only reporter to say it. Mike Silver hopped on it too. Albert Breer was reporting the same thing. So, hey, don't shoot the messengers, all right? Everything's going to be fine. Can't be this tilted in March.
Right. Kevin O'Connell's still there. Brian Flores is still there. You guys got Justin Jefferson, some cool players. You'll be okay. But actually, another team we just mentioned there that's kind of in this quarterback, I don't know. Vikings are not in a quarterback wasteland, but the Giants are definitely in a quarterback wasteland. And there's been now not rumors, but reporting that they have now met with Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco. They have interest, of course, in rookie quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, but I think Cam Ward would be going number 1 overall to the Titans. That'd be my bet. So, QB2 of this class. My question for you, Charles, and maybe this is just the question overall, and I want to just have some fun with this. Of the QBs they've met with, Rodgers, Wilson, Winston, Flacco, would say Shedeur Sanders. Who would give them the best shot of winning in 2025? What would be the most entertaining, and who do you think they actually should sign or draft?
Who would give them the best shot of winning?
I'm coming at you, man.
I mean, you have to like factor in how bad their offensive line is still shaped up to be.
Absolutely, yes.
We talked about the Titans last week, and hey, you got a bunch of B- starters at worst. That's that could give you an A line comparatively to everyone else. The Giants have one healthy. They have one A+ starter, Andrew Thomas, and the rest is really shaky. So when I think like if you're looking at Aaron Rodgers, that seems like a really tough play for me because he's just not as mobile as he used to be. And we've seen last year with the Jets, sometimes he's at a point where when the mistakes and there's bad play in front of him compile, he will check out a little bit and start making some really bad plays. Maybe you go Russell Wilson just because you can still move a little bit. But even then, I don't really find that all too enticing either. But I think maybe Russell Wilson might give you the best shot with your offensive line setup. Certainly something that he's used to over the course of his career, even if he's not as spry as he used to be. But, I think even with Russ, like if you do go that way, you're still taking away some of the really nice things that Malik Neighbors did last year in terms of like intermediate and over the middle of the field, because Russ is probably just going to turn them into a deep ball merchant. So maybe you go Russ and you try and trade down and draft Shedeur Sanders, but I do feel like the one thing that would be kind of a reach would just be sitting there taking Shedeur at 3. I think that's just a little bit rich. Your quarterback room right now is still only Tommy DeVito, so you still need to sign another guy. Even if you do decide to draft a quarterback, so maybe you sign Russ, trade down, see if you can get Shedeur, and then just see who sticks. But man, what a horrible situation. They seem to have clean shop for sure. They should have clean shop.
That's what we just keep coming back to. It's like every time I talk about them, I come back to the same kind of like, man, they should just reset this. Like, because it's just Because say you draft a guy. And I just wrote up Shedeur on Yahoo. And this is kind of the conclusion I came to, is that I think he needs more development than people maybe are making him out to be. And that's why I'm more comfortable taking him on day 2 than top 10. And okay, so if he needs development and needs an offensive line to get to that development, you're going to go to New York? You're going to go to the Giants for a GM and a head coach that are on the hottest seat you can have, with an offensive line that you just laid out as one good starter that's always hurt, and then the rest is just a bunch of shrugs of the shoulders. They signed Stone Forsythe, who had probably the worst pressure rate allowed as tackles last year. So that was a great signing as well. But that's why I'm scared that they talk themselves into drafting somebody. And then they're saying, okay, maybe we go a vet. And there was an argument. Oh yeah, they signed Rodgers and then draft Shedeur. I love to see that quarterback room. I love to see those meetings. And also,
I'll tell you what, I'll be over there every day.
I bet you will. And when the Jets are the calm team in New York, that would be the day. But is there a mystery box QB? The Jackson Dart hype isn't coming out of nowhere, so I always have to kind of keep that in the back of my mind that like I shouldn't be surprised if his name goes several rounds higher than I think it should. But I just don't think this is the ecosystem for a young quarterback with the offensive line and the patience needed. Not even just Shedeur, just any young quarterback, especially if you take them in the first round, especially this group of class, this class that they have. I think it's Cam Ward and then a bunch of day two guys, if I'm being honest. So, man, it's just a tough spot that they're in. That's why I wanted to ask. I think I'm with you that it's either Russ to me or Jameis Winston. And Winston at least will give you some grenades chucked and he'll make it fun at least. He'll take a bunch of sacks behind this offensive line too, but at least he'll unpin the grenade and try some stuff. And, it seems like teammates always love Jameis. So at least he gives you some good vibes there as well. So that to me was maybe the best shot or maybe the best vibes. Most entertaining to me would be Rodgers because I just think that'd just be entertaining. It would just be
so much.
I know. I kind of want it actually, to be honest. But no, it's
me too.
Yeah, just a rough situation in New York, and they know that. Their fan base definitely knows that, and they could have had Drake May if they just didn't win the last couple games last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it could be in a lot different situation now. Anything else with the Giants?
I just don't get why they feel like they need to draft. I understand why they feel like they need to draft a quarterback, but you're obviously like, dude, look at this offensive roster. The defense could be okay, but would like a 6-11 season save Brian Dable, and then you're just rolling over Shedeur to a coaching staff of the GM that didn't take him. And it's like it's so obvious that they're not in a position to what are they going to do? Storm through and beat the Eagles all of a sudden for the NFC East, or like even Dallas would be a struggle for them, right?
Even Washington might be.
Washington. Like this team's really bad, man. Yeah,
I know. They're not one QB away.
It's kind of frustrating. Right, they're not one QB away. I understand why it's kind of frustrating because they have some fun skill talent. Tyron Tracy had a nice year. Obviously, Neighbors is good. Darius Slayton, for what he's worth.
Fun tight end.
Yeah, it's not a bad group, but when you can't block, it's going to be tough.
Can't block, and all the quarterbacks that are outside of Cam Ward, I think, struggle with pressure. So that's again, if you're arguing for somebody else to maybe go in the first round, it's like, that's just not. These aren't the guys that I think can have even early success. I think just the bad habits will get even worse. And that's why it's just a tough proposition. If it's last year and I'm like, take any of these guys, Jane Daniels, Caleb, obviously, and Drake May. It's like, take any of those three, even McCarthy. I was like, I can understand that in New York, but this is just the situation. They kind of just keep getting caught in these spots, like, or they miss out on the top guys and they have to take Daniel Jones the next year. Not have to. They did that openly. But this New York situation is always just interesting. But let's move on to this one's been in the news. The Cincinnati Bengals, because they made some signings. I don't know if you heard this. They re-signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The two players that they've had on their roster the last couple of years, and we've seen these offenses. So kind of know with that. But my question for you, Charles, and the question I have is, I would say, what are their next steps? Do you think they should be addressing the offensive line, defensive line, rest of the defense? Kind of just want to lay it out to you. What do you think the next steps for the Bengals to be to get back to contendership? They did miss the playoffs last year. So to get back into that, where they want to be, especially with this offensive roster.
They got to start spending on defense, man. Like part of the reason why this was doable for them, and people who have looked at their cap space for the past couple of years have said that this was doable for them to sign Jamar and T. Higgins 2 contracts while also having Joe Burrow on his deal as well. If you just look over, like even just looking to 2026 on over the cap or spot track, they don't have all that many cap responsibilities or obligations for next year. It's kind of just like their big 3, and they're kind of hoping for some other guys to come through and live up to those contracts. So they just got to start spending on defense. I don't know how different their defense looks like if you have Jesse Bates still with some of the attrition they've suffered elsewhere. But I do think, like, at this point, come on, man. You got Joe Burrow, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins. We know what that looks like. You're probably looking at a defense in the fall that doesn't have Trey Hendrickson. They were still a terrible defense, even with having one of the best pass rushers in the league on that side of the ball. So I don't really know how much this changes immediately, but if you're willing to open up the pocketbook, I think there's room for them to improve pretty quickly over the next few years. But it's the Bengals. Like they did spend here, but not guaranteed to keep opening up the checkbook. And they've kind of missed on some defensive draft picks over the last few years,
right?
That have left them in this spot. I think most of the defensive line picks they've made have been whiffs. Some of the secondary picks haven't quite panned out, and now you're in a spot where you're playing like prime Big 12 ball from like the mid 2010s, where everyone you can score 40, but you're liable to give up 40 as well.
I'll say it again, as a neutral fan, I love it because I get to. They're going to be some entertaining games. Cincinnati Bengals, yeah, but and this is where I keep reverting back to with the Bengals was that you don't want to deviate from the one that brought you to the dance. I'm busting on that metaphor right now. Dance with the one who brought you. To me, that is this big three, these two receivers and Joe Burrow. And they've had kind of a offensive line that's been moving parts through injuries, through lack of talent, through just stuff. The running back now, they have Chase Brown in there now. And then now they've replaced Tyler Boyd with Gesicki as kind of the third option in this offense. It's a tight end, but he's essentially a slot receiver. He has never blocked anyone in his entire life. But to me, it's like, okay, let's keep the strength. So I understand that argument, but I'd feel so much better if they just had, a path to where I can see the defense really improving. I think they just don't have a lot of needle movers. They have fine players like BJ Hill, fine player. They have fine players on their defense. It's just that it's not a lot of real dudes. And now you got a defensive coordinator that they're bringing on from college. That's like, okay, how is he going to adapt to the NFL level when he was at Notre Dame, Al Golden, with fantastic players? Now he's going to be more of an even setting against other teams. How is he going to do with that? So there's just a lot of questions with them. They have to nail this draft, obviously. Like, this is what happens when you start paying players. You have to nail the draft. I'm glad you brought up where the contracts are at because they have three players in 2026 under contract. They're going to make five, including Higgins and Chase. They'll make more than $10 million, which is Burrow, Orlando Brown, who will be in the last year of his contract, BJ Hill, who I just talked about, who's also going to be over 30. I think he's 30 this year. And then Gesicki's making 7 and change. Logan Wilson, the linebacker's making just under 10. Then they got the receivers. This is a roster that they can do a lot with next year. But again, it's the Bengals. So you always have to kind of keep that in mind because it's like they're not going to be the most active team in that. They've done some things because Burrow's kind of making them do things, but it's just pulling teeth. So that's why it's just so hard to kind of go like, oh yeah, they can just do this. That'll be a fix. But they just need to nail these draft prospects like that. That's really what it comes down to. And they especially nailed on defense. But they're just an interesting team because it's just like, we know what their strength is. We've seen this offense operate at such a high level. We know what this looks like. It's just the rest of the team's got to fill out, which to me is O-line and then stopping the run really more than anything. So I think they should draft a defensive player in the draft in the first round, like a defensive lineman. I think I just keep going back to that, but who knows? Maybe they're just like, let's just keep this A offense and A+ offense and just juice up the offensive line. Let's just keep the good times going. Let's try and score 50 a game and lose 52 to 50.
Dude, I am here for all the Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow duels that we can get. So let's keep it coming.
Yeah. Or Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh and black and yellow. All right. We're going to move on to an AFC team that kind of getting lost in the shuffle. I feel like I haven't talked about this team in a while. So they were actually, when we started this kind of show topic, they were the first one that came to mind. I was like, we got to address this team because they just haven't made some big splashes, kind of brought back a lot of their own guys. That's the Miami Dolphins. So Miami Dolphins, all I have to ask, and this is a Charlie Kelly line, Charlie Day line from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What are you? And that's why I want to ask you, Charles, what are the Dolphins? What should they be doing? What are the Dolphins? What do you think of the Dolphins right
To quote the late Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were, right?
now?
We let them off
Yeah,
the
my
hook.
first boss.
No,
Let them off the fish hook.
it's I don't let me I guess they're just treading water. I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if they really had the capability to just be a little bit more active in free agency than they were. I'm gonna guess probably not due to some of the cap situations that they have going on. But I don't really know what they have to do here besides just run it back for another year and try to add some pieces in the draft. I think when you look at the offensive line, could stand some room to improve, which is always a concern when you're talking about, Tua coming back as your quarterback. But even with him last year, they still figured out, like, if you look at the split between the games Tua didn't play and the games Tua did play, they were close to like being back to a top 5 offense while he was under center. So maybe you're just hoping you can get that for a full season and the defense steadies out if you can add some upgrades in the secondary. But man, like I said before, they're just kind of doing the same old thing, and I would imagine that their season looks pretty similar unless Tyreek Hill like actually takes a step back, and then you're looking at something that might be a little terrifying.
Yeah, then hold on to your hat. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is when even previewing them last year going into the year, and I think we kind of just kept coming to this conclusion. It's like this could work if they stay healthy. And that's what I feel the same way about them. It's every position: quarterback, receiver, Waddle and Hill, offensive line. I mean, Armstead will never play a healthy season, at left tackle, but the rest of their line as well. Defense injuries. I mean, the whole defensive front, Bradley Chubb, injury after injury. Jalen Phillips has faced some injuries. I think they have a lot of talent. Like even some of the free agency signings they made last year are kind of ones that went under the radar as really good signings. Jordan Brooks at linebacker, and then Aaron Brewer at center. Both players that were good players, good starters that they didn't break the bank for. So like their pro scouting is actually pretty dang good. Having said that, they did sign Alexander Madison, who is not a good player. So he's their third running back. So I'm not too worried about that. Even a guy like they signed Pharaoh Brown to be a tight end for him. Pharaoh Brown is just a blocking only tight end, but he's actually pretty good at it. Just they make some nice moves as far as in the margins, but because they've committed so much to so many injured players, they're going to sink or swim based on their injury luck. And I don't know. It's a hard bet. This is why a lot of teams, if they have injury concerns with a player, they drop in the draft or they might not pay him in free agency. That's always in the back of the mind. And yes, guys can be healthy and have a 16, 17 game season and you bet on, and you get that one healthy year. But it's just these bets that these teams and evaluators try to make. The Dolphins' bets continuously are, yeah, this guy has an injury history, but he's fast. And if he's healthy, holy crap, we're good. But when the whole team is made out of that, that's just hard to align. There is a 2% chance that they all are healthy in the home stretch and this team goes gangbusters and is awesome in the back half of next year. But there's just as likely, more likely of a chance that most of these guys end up hurt again and they can't just align those stars. It just kind of actually kind of worked. Align those stars figuratively, literally, all these types of players. But it's just hard. It's a bet that they keep making. And then, like you said, it's kind of like they're running it back because that's kind of their best option. They need to draft a lineman. I will say that. Or Malachi Starks. I think we had him mocked in our last draft going there. That one is too, because I think they have to address safety. But that's the situation that they've been in now. They let Wilkins hit the market. He earned the right to hit the market, as one of my favorite lines I've ever heard a GM say, to test free agency, I think it was. And also this year, letting Holland go because I like that signing for the Giants was because they just are tied up with all these other guys that they've already paid. So they're letting some other talent, some other guys that are actually kind of needle movers go and hit free agency. So just a weird team. Weird team. And I'm not down on them completely. Like, actually, I keep looking back on, like, you just mentioned it. When Tua is healthy, it's like a top 5 offense. When the defense is healthy, that's a top 8 defense. I really think it. It's like, yeah. And if you just tell me that they're healthy, you got top 10 offense, top 10 defense. Yeah, it's a playoff team. We're good. But betting on, I've now seen it too many times that the injuries just make them fall apart. So just kind of where we're at with the Dolphins. What do you think they should go in the draft? Do you think offensive line?
Now that I'm looking at, yeah, they probably should. Bigger need than the safety's a need, but now that I'm looking at it, like depth chart, yeah, I think you got to go offensive line. Yeah,
I know they're picking maybe a little too late for him, but man, Will Campbell would be tremendous for them because it's just like, oh, I don't know where to play him. Hey, doesn't matter. He can start for you at one of these 5 spots and be a nice leader for you. So like, yeah, that's like I think the ideal pick for them would be a Will Campbell. But yeah, we are going to take our first break and then we'll come back with a few more teams that we have big questions on. All right, we are back. We're moving out west and going to the NFC with this one. Back to back, actually. We're going to go with the Seattle Seahawks, who have been active in free agency and in the trade market as well. Trading away Geno for a 3rd rounder, signing Sam Darnold, signing DeMarcus Lawrence, signing Cooper Kupp, a couple 30-plus-year-old free agents there that, I have to see how it works out there. But also signing MVS, who has experience in this offense last year with Clint Kubiak. He is going to basically be the X vertical, sacrificial X role, as Matt Harmon likes to call him, where he's going to just create the vertical element in this offense. Charles, do you think this is enough for the Seahawks? And I have some follow-up questions, but what do you think of the Cooper Kupp signing, the MVS signing? And we already talked a little bit about Darnold, but what do you think do you think this is enough going with Kupp, MVS, and do you think this could be a top half offense with this kind of setting that they have?
No. I not there just yet. I honestly, the Cooper Kupp signing, I don't really get why they feel like they need to do this. Because obviously at this point in his career, and I mean, he had a great run, but like you don't even need to watch too much. Like you can just look at some of the numbers over the past couple of years, like success rates falling off a cliff, yards per targets down, just not the same athlete that he was.
Tracking data is down too. Like his max speed and average speed are down too and trending down too.
Yeah. So, I don't really get the fit because he's not a guy that I would expect would be winning on the outside at this point in his career, consistently at least. So, his best spot's probably slot, which is also Jackson Smith-Njigba's best spot. Yep. So I guess they're just going to have to flip-flop those guys and try to figure out something that works. I think you probably need to sign someone like MVS just because, like, if you didn't, that might be the most congested passing game in the league. If you were just talking about, we're going to roll it there with JSN and Cooper Kupp. Okay, no, you need someone that can go down and at least scare people.
Where it's just the paint is just clogged because no one could shoot and space it out. So yeah, to your point.
I am curious to see what this looks like though, because I don't think Clint Kubiak's like, a godsend or anything, but I do feel very confident that he's better fit than what Ryan Grubb was doing last year.
Yeah.
So I think even just having someone like that in the room will shore up some of the issues that they had last year. But man, for them to get into like the top half, I think you would just need maybe a little bit better performance out of the offensive line that I'm expecting. And I guess Cooper Kupp will kind of turn it back a little bit. In a vacuum, I don't mind the Sam Darnold signing. Like if we were just walking into the offseason without a quarterback, I wouldn't mind it. I don't really like the process that they took to get here. I just thought you could have kept rolling with Geno for another year, maybe draft someone. But, they made their decision. Sam, his contract kind of looks like a 1-year tryout just to see how it is, how it goes. I don't know if they've given him the best shot to succeed with that. We'll see what happens in the draft. But I think this is probably close to like a top 20 offense. Luckily, you got a really good running back duo. Sam can make some plays when he's on his game. He can really be a playmaker from the pocket and outside the pocket. And we know that JSN is a good receiver in his own right. So it's not like totally talentless. It's just kind of incomplete, I think, in a critical way, though.
Yeah, they need one more thing, and to me, it's a lineman. Even though if I like Olulowatimi at center, and I want to see what they do with Christian Haynes. He might be a better fit for this offense as well at guard. They draft him out of UConn last year. And also they just played games with him as far as like playing time and like all that stuff. It was kind of weird. So just want to see what the new staff does with him. But the MVS signing, I like more than the Cooper Kupp signing in the weirdest way.
Yeah, same.
Because in the weirdest way, like, yeah, I know Cooper Kupp, and when he's been healthy, is a way better football player. But MVS's role fits this offense and what they need so much better, which is why they probably signed him. But even just looking up, I had the stats ready, but you look at like Cooper Kupp and JSN are both good from the slot. People have made this point ad nauseum, including us. They were. You look at JSN had had the most routes in the NFL from the slot last year. Cooper Kupp was 18th. Also didn't play full games. JSN 22nd in yards per route from the slot. Cooper Kupp 15th. Receptions first 8th. Receiving first downs first 13th. First downs per route 17th 20th. So 2 top 20 receivers any way you shake it from the slot. 2 of the better guys from the slot. And I was like, me trying to stay a little bullish on the Seahawks more than other people. I was like, Jason's pretty good from the outside, though. So this is going to work out. This is going to work out. Okay, never mind. He is solid from the outside. But to unlock JSN is to play him from the slot, which is fine if Cooper Kupp could play admirably from the outside. He doesn't have to be great. He just has to be okay. The problem is he's not even okay from the outside. He was 61st in the NFL out of 80 qualifying receivers. So I did 300 routes or more. 61st in first downs per route from the outside. 37th in yards per route. 59th in explosive receptions per route run. 2.5%. So he had 7 receiving first downs on 118 routes from the outside last year. 73rd, he ranked out of 80 receivers on outside first downs. He's just not good from the outside. He can't win against press. He does not have the twitch anymore. He is a smooth route runner that wins in space against zone on the inside. So guess who else is good at that? JSN. So JSN on the outside is solid. He's like middle of the pack. He's like, he's 34th in success rate per route, 29th in first downs per route. But I'd much rather have one of the best guys in the slot stay in the slot. But the problem is Cooper Kupp is going to limit that. And you pay Cooper Kupp and you're not paying him to be on the bench. So they just created a whole new problem. And this is what happened with the Bears last year. Okay, we have DJ Moore, who's a great player. Okay, we're going to draft Roman Dunze. Okay, really like that. You're good. You don't have to do anything else. All right, we're going to trade for Keenan Allen. And then that just now we committed to him. We hired his old coach, and now it just convolutes everybody else's development, everybody else's role. So that's just what it's. There's other things the Seahawks are doing. I actually don't like. I'm fine with the Sam Darnold thing. Of course, I'm more of the bullish guys on Sam Darnold, but I'm realistic of what he is. But I think this offense will be good for him. I think the run game will be better. But that Cooper Kupp signing kind of just deflated some of the wind in my sails, took the wind out a little bit because I was liking some of the other things they were doing. Even the DeMarcus Lawrence thing, I like more than other people. It's a little rich, but I did like it. But that, man, I don't know. That one, it just was weird to me, the Kupp thing. So they might be on the Tevin Jenkins signing from Chicago. You have any Jenkins thoughts?
Fellow bad back halfer. I don't know. I felt like at once he was. I kind of feel bad for Tevin sometimes because at once he was. He looked kind of promising maybe a couple years ago, but just kind of deteriorated over time. I honestly I don't even know if he's that much better than what they already have right now. But I guess it's worth just throwing as many bodies as you can.
I mean, I would just be giving him a 1-year deal if I were signing him. I would not want any long-term money on him. But Seahawks kind of play their own game, it seems like. But I'll say this again. This will wrap it up. Is they are one of the most interesting teams in the NFL. Like they have gotten that check mark for me, and I'm going to keep eyes on them for the rest of the season because I want to see what they do in the draft and onwards. Moving a little bit further south, but still in the NFC West, we're going to the San Francisco 49ers, who I want to remind people going into last year were the favorites in the NFC, and I think the second favorite or the favorites, tied for the favorites to win the Super Bowl before last season. Missed the playoffs, have a season from hell, on field, off field, injuries, guys quitting and not going back in the game at linebacker. I mean, just you could not have a worse kind of season what unfolded for San Francisco last year, especially with the expectations that they have. So I want to ask you, Charles, what do they need to keep doing or continue to do or add on to get on top, back on top of the NFC? What more can they add to the trenches? And where your eyes are going at some of the next things they can do to kind of launch back to the top of the NFC.
I mean, they have needs in trenches, both sides of the ball, but the offensive line isn't. Offensive line's not good enough. I think they need to kind of spend a pick on offensive line to start the draft. But if they're not going to do that, defensive line makes sense, both spots. But I just don't think you can have another year where like Colton McKivitz is starting a right tackle for you. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The interior needs work. And if you're actually going to do this Brock Purdy thing and sign him long term, go get some big boys to block up front, because I think they need some help there.
Yeah, they need to me, just make their lives easier. Like make your life easier. Don't put everything on your own scheme, Kyle Shanahan. Don't put everything on Chris Kasarik, your defensive line coach, getting the most out of these guys and another reclamation project for him to work with. Those are the things that have, again, talking about dancing with the one who brought you, those are the ones that make sense. Like, they have had success doing that, but I think they could lift their floor up a little bit. And that's where trench play and adding to the trenches, offensive line or defensive line, kind of does that, because they can impact the game and impact plays even outside of the design. That's why I just keep looking at their offensive line. It's like, all right, Trent Williams is what, 36, 35, my age.
Like that,
Then we got, then Jake Brendel is a average at best starting center that's good in this system, but is not a needle mover at all. And then, left guard as a whole, Dominic Pooney is a keeper. And then Colton McKivitz has been a negative since he's been starting out there, and they mitigate that. And it's a lot easier when he's the only hole. You can mitigate one spot. But, man, it's like, just draft a lineman. Just and like you said, especially if they want to pay Purdy and go down that path and whatever contract he ends up getting, well, now you just want to make his life easier, even outside the designs, so at least get that pocket always feeling like fine. So he doesn't have to get maybe into his creation mode where he can get a little skittish. So I think they just add to the trenches, almost eat their medicine or take their medicine, eat some vegetables. Maybe
Right.
They've gone away with heavy skill position drafts, or at least that's what they've been adding on and paying. So now maybe this is the time. Okay, now let's get some more beef and go through there. And let's not take a running back in the third round. let's wait till at least, later to maybe get a guy. But they lost a lot in free agency. Some guys, justifiably, that they let him go. It's hard to, when you're trying to figure out how to pay all these guys. Hey, Hufanga just got hurt. Dre Greenlaw just got hurt. Okay, we can let those guys go. Needle moving players, though. And so you have to figure out a way to make up for that. Fred Warner plays out of his mind all the time. Nick Bosa plays out of his mind all the time. Demonador Lenore is a good player, but they just need some other guys to just be solid. Malcolm Mustafa looks like a solid starter for them at the very least at safety, but they just need more of that. They got some stars still. They just need more guys to kind of fill in the gaps. Big guys would definitely help with that, I think, anyways. Wow, let's go into, oh boy, a team, some of the Giants conversation applies to this team. That's the Cleveland Browns, who are picking one spot above the Giants in the NFL draft. I'm just going to lay it out like this to you, Charles. Is drafting a rookie quarterback a good idea for them? That's my question.
If it's Cam Ward, I think it's defensible. Anyone else? No. Right. Because the thing is, like, you're not just thinking about this year, right? We've talked about it before. Deshaun Watson has an $81 million dead cap or cap hit for next year. Obviously, that's not going to be what they walk into the season with. So once you take care of that and restructure it and push it more into the future, like, you're still talking about 3 or 4 years where Deshaun Watson's on the payroll. Man, just trade down, hit a single, I think. Maybe you just sit there at 2, it takes Travis Hunter. But the idea that you need to take a quarterback number 2 this year, man, you're not ready for that. Like, you haven't even gotten to the hard parts of roster construction with the Deshaun Watson stuff yet. So I would try to trade down. If not, maybe just take Travis Hunter and just try to stack as much talent as you can.
Yeah, just get more blue chip players on a roster that can always be adding blue chip players. That's not the hardest thing. And don't. That's why needing a quarterback, obviously I'm saying the obvious here, is going to be one of the worst positions you could be in, because then you get desperate and then you overdraft guys. And then now you put expectations on guys and now they have to play before they're ready, or even that they can have a high floor. And that's why I'm scared if Shedeur Sanders ends up being that guy, because there are some rumors about him going to Cleveland. But that just scares the crap out of me, because not only just the offensive line this year, which has some fine pieces, they're all gone next year, or at least some of them. But also just other aspects of this team. Like, I mean, just like that quarterback would have to be doing a lot for this offense as far as pointing and shooting and operating. I think Sanders needs time to even reach that kind of floor that you'd even have to operate to be a kind of point shoot pocket thrower or pocket passer. So honestly, this draft class reminds me a lot, and I have to say this, of the 2019 class, the Kyler Murray draft class, where it's Kyler Murray was QB1, but not a perfect QB1, but kind of the best of a bad bunch. And I think that's kind of what Cam Ward's kind of optimistic timeline is, to be kind of that Kyler Murray tier, kind of middle of the quarterback tier that he can win you games, but does need help. But then the rest of that class was really good defensive class, some cool linemen in that class as well. But then also the other quarterbacks got overdrafted like crazy. That was the Daniel Jones class. That was the Dwayne Haskins class. And that's what I'm scared of these teams going like, well, we got to take a quarterback. And then they overdraft these guys that should be going on day 2. And I just think the Browns need so much. And again, another team that, because of the Deshaun Watson thing, which was their own doing, they are just in such a rough spot. And they just kind of, that Band-Aid, that's not even a Band-Aid to rip off. That is I don't know what to call it. Cast? Gauze?
You're suffering for sure. You're suffering for sure. Like I said, dude, $81 million cap hit for next year. So obviously you have to restructure that again. And he's already got a $53 million void year for the first year he's not a Brown, plus 3 more after that. I mean, this is why we were saying, like, don't restructure, man. Just eat it. Eat it now and be done with it after 5 years. And now you're going to be in a spot where, like the ghost of his contract is going to be haunting you guys as you're trying to build around the next guy. I think you just need to get as many picks as you can and just slap players on this roster, because like I said, you still haven't even gotten to the tough part of the rebuild yet. Like, the Myles Garrett contract hasn't even really kicked in. You're still dealing with Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. It's just really bad.
It is. I know. And then you got freaking Myles Garrett signing all the money and just like, hey, I'm going to help out with free agency. It's just no recruiting going on at all. And that's the other thing, and this will kind of leave it at, is if they do draft a rookie quarterback, you got to look at how expensive the quarterback room is. It's not just, obviously, and this is just, so many people say it, is like, having a rookie quarterback contract is the biggest advantage you can have. Cap going up, other positions, if you get a Pro Bowl player on a rookie quarterback contract or a rookie contract, that works too. But if you're paying the room a lot of money, you negate that advantage, which actually leads us to the team that did that recently, signing a quarterback that ended up being a flub. And then, I should say a lemon a little bit, and then drafting a guy in the top 10. And now you're paying your room a lot of money, even though you have a rookie quarterback. That's the Atlanta Falcons, who I believe, Charles, is your favorite team. I haven't talked some Falcons in a minute, and I'm very excited to do so. How many points are the Atlanta Falcons going to be allowing in a game next year? That's the question I want to ask you. All of them?
All of the points. All of the points. It's funny. I was actually texting Mina about this morning because there was some report about like Kirk Cousins maybe going for a 3rd round pick, which is like, come on now.
Third?
He's not going for a third round pick. Yeah.
Fit that fast.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I said. I was like, I would trade a 6 for him maybe. But when you start looking at the defensive roster, this might be the worst front 7 that they've had in quite some time. Because it's like there's no Grady here. It's insanely bad. It's so bad. You talk about like Leonard Floyd.
Fox, though.
Yeah. We let Grady Jarrett go. We kept David Onyemata. Like, you could even give us a fan service of keeping Grady Jarrett. You could have figured out some way to just keep him around, but they're rolling with it. Right now, the defensive tackle room is what? David Onyemata, Rook Ororo, Taquan Graham, who they just re-signed. It was a 5th round pick a few years ago. I mean, it's terrible. As far as I'm concerned, they look worse on paper than they did last year. I guess it just depends if Penix can actually have a breakout season year 2. But I mean, dude, he's only played 3 games. I don't know. I hope he works, or else this is not going to be a watchable football team. And I will say, I've got that thing bookmarked where they said they weren't going to be drafting high enough to pick a quarterback because that defense will certainly give them a chance.
Oh, it's going to give them a high chance, I think, for a couple of years. I mean, even when they played well for a few weeks last year, all just kind of fell apart. They weren't creating any pressure. It's just like, okay, they need pressure. They need to create pressure. Okay, so we need a guy to get after passer. Well, they also need to help out the run. Okay, so they need a linebacker, a defensive tackle. They also need a second corner and a nickel. But no, it's just, you look at this team, and it's like they need so much. And that's why what they did last year was like, do you guys know what you are? Like, because even then the defense was needed a lot, and they are still in that position with their offensive line that, they lost their center. But I actually like as a Ryan Newsell, I actually like him.
Newsell,
So I actually like him. Yeah, he's fine. I don't think that'll be a drop off at the center spot. But then, Jake Matthews is getting older. Caleb McGarry they might have to move on from him. They had really good offensive line health last year. So you bet on that dropping off, even if it's just average, or kind of middle of the pack with games lost or anything like that. It's just they had luck last year on offense, and that was the result of it. And I think the defense dropped off, and I'm going to assume that the offense might drop off as well because of that, because of just injury health. So it's just,
it's bad.
Do you think Raheem survives the year?
I think he'll survive the year.
April 20th. I know that's mean to even ask that, but you think he survives this season?
March 20th, even.
I say.
You said April 20th. That's a good day too. I think he survives the year, but I could definitely see a scenario where him and Terry are both gone after this offseason. I mean, you got to draft a defensive player. Terry hasn't drafted one in the first round yet. We'll see who they decide to go after. I would guess it's probably a pass rusher in the first round, but please, just anyone with a pulse who can rush a passer just to get things started. I mean, it's one guy is not fixing their problems, but at least it's a start, something they haven't had in a very long time.
Do you have a guy that you like? That you maybe call your shot?
Not really, honestly. Like if they were a little bit higher, maybe. I would love. I wish they had maybe lost a couple more games with Kirk, so you could be in Mason Graham territory. But I feel like at this class, like at 15, you're taking shots on maybe a Shamar Stewart if he's there, Mike Green, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, who are all I think good pieces. But as far as being an ace, no.
It's you like him for other teams, but not where the Falcons are at. I actually had, not to bring it back to the Seahawks, but I actually did have a question for you just for the Seahawks, because I had to ask it because I wrote it down. How many games do you think the Seahawks are winning next year, if you just had to put it right now?
I think anywhere from 6 to 8 seems fair. Because I think the NFC West is going to be tough as hell next year.
Yeah.
The Rams should be good. I really would be surprised if the 49ers are as bad as they were last year. Because even with some of the flimsy or not, some of the bad play they had, that was still a pretty good passing game for most of the season if you just look at the numbers. So you're talking about, to me, what looks like one of the toughest to be, and the Cardinals too, could take a step forward. So I think 6 to 8 wins would be okay. I think to me, Sam should be I've done this before. We had Greg Williams back in 2019. The defense was really good, top 10, sometimes top 5 some weeks, and we were just trying to chuck it on offense and see what happens. So
I'm putting them at 9, but so we'll put it over under 8.5, and then we'll go from there. We'll keep every month or two we'll go Seahawks check, see where they're at. All right, last team here, New Orleans Saints. What is the plan in New Orleans? What do they even prioritize in the draft, Charles, that you would make him, I know it's not your team, but would make you feel a little bit better of the direction that New Orleans is going?
Dude, I don't know. I think this is just classic. Whoever is best player available on your board, just take them. Luckily for them, this looks like this is going to be the last year that they were in serious cap trouble. I think they kind of come out of it next year as long as they can just be patient and not do anything drastic over the next 6 months.
Big if.
But
big if,
right. But we've seen like Will Johnson kind of fall down the board a little bit. I think that would be a good fit, especially after they traded away Lattimore to the Commanders. If he can get his head on straight for whatever concerns people have about him, I still think he's, one of the best corner or one of the straight up just flat out best talents in the draft. Even if you're starting to look at just like trying to plan for long term, one idea that I thought was kind of interesting was maybe drafting Ted McMillan there from Arizona because. Chris Olave is a great player, but I don't know how long you can, or really not how long, but just like how hopeful you can be that he plays like a long and healthy career with his concussion issues. And if he doesn't, like you're going to need some help at wide receiver. So I think that even drafting like a receiver could be a surprise fit, but whoever they have at the front of their board, you should just take them because I think I saw somewhere early this morning that there was some Saints fans complaining. This is basically, I think, the lowest pick that a 5-12 team has had in the 17-game playoff or 17-game season era at 9. So,
I believe that.
They're not good.
I thought the same thing with the Bears picking 10 is that I'm like, you're only at 10? Didn't the bottom fall out? Like, I'm kind of like, weren't you guys terrible at the end of the year? Like, you guys are at 10, but you always kept bringing it up, like how funny, like how bad the bottom was last year in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like the bottom was really, really bad. Like there wasn't the middle class last year.
I think prior to this year, the lowest pick that a 5-12 team had was 6th overall. And this year, the Bears are 10th overall with a 5-12 record. So, the bottom of the league. Come on, guys. Come on.
Pick it up. Come on. Are trying. And what's even funnier is they're not even trying to tank. They were actually trying. That's just how bad they ended up being. Yeah. No, and the thing was, the Saints did bringing back Chase Young. Like that move. Signing Justin Reed. Like that move a lot. Why are you guys doing it? And that's where it's like, I like those moves for other teams, but them, I'm just like, I don't know. They have to take a step back and move forward. And they're not doing that yet. So like this year feels weird, like a big question mark for them. And it's like, I want to talk about them more seriously because I do like aspects of the team. I love Chris Olave. He always just keeps getting hurt. Great player. They have a lot of cool players. It's just it all coming together in the long-term plan just makes me just always stay so bearish on them. And even if I want to come around. So I feel like just I always have to keep a pin in them until I want to talk about them later. So I'm with you prioritizing the draft. We went Will Johnson, which I like there. So lost to Debo, trade away Lattimore, all that stuff. But they could go with a lot of spots, and I'll be like, yep, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense. But the McMillan one's a lot of fun too. We're going to take our last break. I mentioned our mock draft. We're going to come back with some of our favorite fits from our last mock as a way to pan for prospects. All right, we are back and we're panning for prospects. And how we're doing it today, tying it in with our latest mock draft that we pumped out there on Yahoo. Was that 18.0? Version 18.0 of our mock draft? Yeah, I think so at this point in time. But Charles, what was one of your favorite team-to-player pairings in our latest mock as a way to pan for some of these prospects of this draft class?
We had the Texans taking Gray Zabel at the end of the first round. I think it was around they picked 25, which I think is an appropriate range for him to go. The Texans, their early entrance into the offseason has been kind of funny because, I understand people who, when you look at Laramie Tunsil, you look at a lot of the metrics, you're like, oh man, this still looks to be one of the best offensive tackles in the league. I struggled to get past 19 penalties last year, which is insane for any offensive lineman, let alone a veteran. And I do think there was, start to see some decline in this game. So I honestly didn't mind the trade away for them to get rid of Tunsil for that haul of picks that they got from the Commanders. But what they've done since then, I'm like, dude, what? Well, maybe you should have just kept the Tunsil. Like, if you're gonna have Cam Robinson as your left tackle, you might as well have just kept Laramie Tunsil. They're trying to figure out what they're gonna do on the interior. Maybe it'll be Titus Howard, some combination of like Titus Howard, Juice Drugs. Ed Ingram, Laken Tomlinson, which is like, I don't know. And then Blake Fisher. Yeah, Blake Fisher at right tackle, which is also a big question mark. I just think Zabel makes a lot of sense here because he can play a lot of positions. He played basically all over the line at North Dakota State. He's got a lot of athleticism to play. Keep that going in the future. I think he moves well. I think it's functional athleticism. Like, he looks pretty good in the field. And for a team that, even though they've made moves, I'd still say has a fair amount of holes in their offensive line, just drafting someone who you feel like you can play anywhere feels like a good bet to me.
Yeah, and Zabel would be a little off kilter for Casario because he hasn't drafted a non-Power 4, Power 5 player yet.
Power 2.
Power 2. He hasn't drafted one yet. And it's like, well, maybe you should just maybe start looking. Maybe you look at some of these other guys. No, I like Gray as a player a lot. I just think has that more of a solid starter. Like, I watched his tape against Colorado. I thought he held up really well as a tackle, but obviously just seeing how he moves, his size, his weight, everything, core strength is kind of one of those things, or anchor, some of the things makes me a little iffy him on the tackle side, but at guard, oh yeah, or at center, I think he could be a needle moving center, which I would love for them to take because it's just calm everyone down. I know they drafted Juice Scruggs to be this, but they've moved him around to guard, center just to fill spots, but I always thought Juice Scruggs should have been a center only. But I think Zabel at least gives them a shot. Get our best 5 out there, and he can fill out the interior in some way, shape, or form. The stopgaps that they signed and trade for are a little concerning to me because signing Cam Robinson to the 1-year deal, yeah, he's a stopgap, and yeah, he has started. But I've brought the stat up a lot. He allowed the highest one-on-one pressure rate among all offensive tackles last year in the NFL once he joined the Vikings. And even if you looked at the whole season, he was still below average when he was with the Jags. He's always been average at best at tackle. And, the Patriots, who have gigantic gaps on their offensive line, said no thanks. And that's because, Doug Marrone, their offensive line coach, who I also have some issues with, some of the stuff he's done recently. But he was like, yeah, I don't want Cam Robinson. I coached him before. I don't want him again. That should be a big red alert. Like, a team that desperately needs offensive linemen, and coaches love coaching players they used to coach because they're lazy. And he was like, no legs. That is scary to me. And the argument the Texans are trying to make is, oh, we had such a toxic offensive line room. We want to revamp some of the personalities. And I wonder if the Seahawks are kind of the same thinking too, like Cup being all that stuff, but that's a side subject. But I think that's their argument. But the guys that they replace them with are bad. I'm fine with having good personalities if the guys are at least average. But Cam Robinson was outright bad last year. Outright bad. This is just eye test. I always go offensive line stuff off eye test. I look at the stats, Joe, so it encapsulates a little more, sticks a little more when we're talking about it on a podcast. Ed Ingram, who they signed, and Texans fans are going, he's not starting, he's depth. He sucks at depth. He allowed the highest pressure rate of guards, and that completely matches the eye test because he is terrible. He has yet to show any semblance of being a good player or even a tolerable player at guard in the NFL. Like, he should be off rosters. Then going Laken Tomlinson, supposed to be a great guy, leader, all that stuff, really is tailed off. Just especially some of the places he's been recently. But the Seahawks last year, he allowed the 4th highest one-on-one pressure rate among all guards. He was part of the issue in Seattle last year amongst all the other players. So it was like okay, we're getting rid of Kenyon Green. We're getting rid of Laramie Tunsil. We're getting rid of Shaq Mason. Okay, we're going to revamp this room. And then they just signed a bunch of guys. One has character concerns from his old coach. Ed Ingram had character concerns coming out of college. Both bad players. This is the plan? All right, so, okay, let's draft a guy. Gray Zabel. Let's solidify all of this and just kind of, shore up some of these things on the offense. So even if he's against type for what the Texans have done in the past, at least I think makes sense to stabilize him.
Dude, I didn't even realize the whole only Power 5 because he drafted a guy from Oregon State in 2022, but they were still in the Pac-12 at that point.
Correct.
So, dude, I'm just looking at the draft they had this year. Well, they didn't have a first round pick. Georgia, Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Auburn, Michigan. Then the year before, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, Houston, TCU, Alabama, Notre Dame. He wants the pedigree, man.
That's what he wants.
Pedigree.
Oh, and then I'm sure Cam Robinson going to Alabama. He's like, oh, yeah, this is great. Saban
That Ingram
stamp.
LSU.
Ingram LSU. Lincoln Thompson went to Duke. Still counts, though.
Yeah.
Still counts. And also
Still
a former
counts.
first rounder. That also might be a part of this, too. That high draft pedigree as opposed to just watching what these guys are and how they play in these systems. All right, well, that was nice fun. Get to talk about the Texans. They should have been one of the questions that we had, but we got him in here anyways. But yeah, Zabel, though, good player. I'm glad you threw his name out here. I will throw out my prospect team match. That was Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State with the Seattle Seahawks. This is more, not so much Warren going to the Seahawks, but a tight end in the first round going to the Seahawks. This has been a pairing. You and I have kind of massage this one and on our mock drafts a little bit. We've had Loveland going there, Colson Loveland. We've had now Tyler Warren going there. I just think a tight end makes a lot of sense for where the Seahawks are at and what they want to do. Now, we just mentioned all the slot stuff and that, all right, that's the receivers. But they do need another pass catcher, I think. MVS is a role player. His role is to take the top off the defense, catch a couple deep balls. Maybe they need some more guys that can create after the catch, that can create one-on-one advantages. I think Loveland could be that. I think Warren could be that. And some of the versatility and the upside that he can block in line. The short arms are a little worrisome. I'm not going to lie. Talked about that with Trevor earlier this week. But he still has some blocking to him. What helps is being in this Kubiak-Shanahan offense, I think, is a better fit for him. It's not power blocking. It's zone shield blocking. So whether it's Warren or Loveland, I think that matches perfectly for what they want to do in that type of offense. Even if it's not always as much zone as it used to be, it's still pretty heavy zone. On top of it, just player or team fit with that room. Noah Fant kind of tapered off as a player. He's a fine starter. I'm bullish on AJ Barner. I think that's a pretty cool room to make out, especially for an offense that wants to use tight ends like Kubiak and Shanahan offenses do. That is their preferred method, is being in 12 personnel like every snap, because they can move guys around and dictate them. I think Warren could be perfect for that role. Barner long-term could be your inline guy full-time. Warren can do a little bit of it, but he also can be that move chess piece for the Seahawks. So I really like this fit. I'm coming around. Not coming around. I'm kind of fan fictioning and trying to manifest maybe they take a tight end in the first round because I just kind of like the fit of where they're at. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah,
we did it.
I like this fit too. I think that this is maybe for more so than other offenses, it can be a crucial point to add talent to. And Noah Fant has had his chances. I think you probably need an upgrade there. And also, even if you're just talking about getting back to being maybe a more heavy run team than they were last year, you're going to need an upgrade blocking that tight end anyways. And I think that Warren would probably be a big boost over where Noah Fant and some of the other guys were. So I actually think if you take Warren and for the next few years, you're looking at Warren and AJ Barner as your tight end duo for this offense. That's actually kind of sweet. But still some other pieces to to upgrades, which is why I understand why Seahawks fans might be looking at this as a tight end in the first round. Yeah, I understand the apprehension, but this isn't going to be a one-year fix anyways. And I think, if we have him falling to pick 18, there are people who have him going higher than that, so it could even be good value. I think he's a pretty special player, especially once he has the ball in his hands. You're just not going to see that many guys that size who can credibly take a wildcat snap and be a productive runner. I want to say he averaged something like 7 or 8 yards per carry for his career, plus a handful of touchdowns. That's a pretty special athlete. I think it would be pretty fun to just add another mouth to feed in this offense. Now, I do think that it would kind of be an interesting fit with Cooper Kupp and JSN, but that's an interesting fit within itself. So, just keep stacking talent. Eventually, Cooper Kupp will be off the roster.
Exactly. That's how I look at it too. And they, that's seriously though. And they got the extra second rounder too. So I'm sure Seahawks fans are going offensive line. It's no, I get that. But Tyler Booker, who might go here, isn't really a great fit for this type of offense. I think he's best in the power scheme and everything. So there's other guys but I think they're all a little bit of a reaches, maybe not perfect fit offensive line wise. Again, it's eye of the beholder with this. But they have the pick 50. They have pick 52 because they traded DK Metcalf. They got pick 92 because of the Geno trade. So, or they got that one through the Lions. But they have assets. And I think this draft is loaded with guys between picks 20 and 50 that are real. Like that's how I have a lot of guys graded. So it's a little more comfortable maybe taking those guys there. So this is trying to maybe get the best of both worlds and try and fit what they're trying to do there, which, we'll figure it out. Most interesting team in the NFL, the Seattle Seahawks. But we're closing it out today. We'll be back on Monday with, I believe, a positional preview. It'll be fun. We got some fun positional previews coming up. Charles and I will be doing some defenders for the draft. We'll have a receiver preview with Matt Harmon because that is his 110-mile-an-hour fastball. I can't wait for that one. We'll have an offensive line preview with a guy named Mike Tice. He apparently used to coach line or something in the NFL. I might know him, but yeah, we're going to do a little offensive line preview show, which I'm very excited about. But we got all that. We got a quarterback preview show too with a special guest on that one as well. That's going to be a lot of fun upcoming in the next month. Plenty of good stuff. I am Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice on Twitter and Nate Tice on Blue Sky. Charles, where can they find you? What are you working on? I believe you got a nice maybe some prospect profiles brewing right now.
Yeah, working on finishing up a Shamar Stewart profile. Hopefully March Madness doesn't delay me too much, but everyone gets a mulligan on the first 2 days. So we'll see how long it takes to finish that. I'll be doing the fantasy forecasts for the next month with Matt Harmon, doing our 30 in a row now. We've done our fantasy forecast draft breakdown shows leading into the draft, pulling me out of my comfort zone, getting me to talk about a bunch of skill players. But next week, we're talking about running backs. Today, we talk about quarterbacks, a lot of Kim Ward, a lot of Shador Sanders. We got the mock draft up. I feel like a broken record, but, anything that me, Nate, Matt Harmon, Charles Robinson, Jory Epstein, Frank Schwab, that gang, just check us out because we're going to have you covered over the next few weeks for the draft free agency.
Working on our draft show. We'll probably be announcing that soon, which we're very excited about, doing that live. But yeah, like Charles said, a lot of good stuff. I got my Shador Sanders article out there, so check that out on Yahoo as well. Make sure to send those mailbag questions as well, football301mailbag at yahoosports.com. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us, 5 stars. And 5 stars, you leave a question in there. We'll answer that question. I pinky promise that we will. We have just a lot of stuff to talk about with the draft and free agency. I'm sorry, but watch us on YouTube as well, the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes. Thank you all for listening. See you guys next time.